So, if you have never heard this word before, you may be wondering, what are conditionals? Sometimes we call conditionals if clauses. A clause is like a part of a sentence, right? So, conditionals describe the result of something that might happen in the present or future, or might have happened but didn't in the past. And if that sounds a little confusing, don't worry. We're going to talk about it all today. So, conditionals are made using different English verb tenses, and we're going to learn all about it. Today, we are going to talk about the four main kinds of conditionals in English. So, we have something called the zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. So we have a 0, 1, 2, 3 conditional. There's also something called mixed conditionals, but we're going to keep it as simple as we can today for this challenging topic. All right, so let's get started. We're going to go through one by one. So let's start with our zero conditional. So, zero conditional. This is used to talk about general facts and truths. So, things that are true. So let's take a look at some examples. What does this mean? So in conditionals, we have our if clause and our main clause to make our whole sentence. So for zero conditionals, we're using the simple present tense, talking about facts, things that are generally true. So we use if and simple present. And our main clause is also simple present. So, zero conditional, basically, if this thing happens, that thing happens. This is used to talk about true things. For example, I might say, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. We can see here in this example, I'm using simple present. If you heat, it boils. And I'm just sharing a general fact, right? If you do this, this happens. If you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. If it rains, the road gets wet, right? Just a simple fact. If this thing happens, if our condition, if it rains, the road gets wet. Simple fact, just something that is true. So we use our zero conditional to talk about general truths and facts. Let's look at some more examples. So here's another example. In this case, we are using a negative. If plants don't get enough water, they die. Right? So here we're using, again, simple present. If plants don't get enough water, they die. Sad but true. I have many plants, so I know this all too well. So one thing to note, and we're going to see this for all our conditional types, often we have our if clause and then our main clause. If this, then that. However, we can also switch it around. Plants die if they don't get enough water. So here we have our main clause and then our if. This is also correct. So both of these we can use. So if it's easier for you to remember the if, then, you can do that. But just know you can also switch them. If plants don't get enough water, they die. Or plants die if they don't get enough water. Let's look at a couple more zero conditional examples. If my husband has a cold, I usually catch it. So here again, we're just using simple present, and we're using an adverb of frequency, which we always use with simple present. And again, we can also switch our clauses here. Our if clause and main clause, we can switch. I usually catch a cold if my husband gets sick. Okay, let's look at one more. So, zero conditional is used to talk about simple true things, right? If plants don't get water, they die. If you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. Simple true facts. But we can also use this zero conditional to give instructions. So let's take a look at a couple examples. If you want to see a movie, call me before 5 p.m. Maybe I am talking to my friend and they're saying, I don't know if I want to see a movie. I have so much work to do. I might say, okay, well, if you want to see a movie, call me before 5, and then we can go. Or another example, if John calls, tell him I'm busy. So here we have our condition, and then our main clause is an instruction, right? Do this thing. If this happens, do this thing. And in this case, we're also using simple present, simple present. So that's it for zero conditional. We use it for true facts, simple true things, simple present, and we can also use it to give instructions. Okay, that's the easy one. Next, let's go to our first conditional. The first conditional refers to a possible condition and its probable result. These sentences are based on facts and used to make statements about the real world. So you'll see why this matters in the future. First conditional is used to talk about real things that might happen, really might happen. We use this to talk about the present or future, and the situation is real. So present or future, and the situation is real. So let's see what this all means. So here, let's look at a table for first conditional. If, simple present, and our main clause, simple future. So here, if this thing happens, that thing will happen. And remember, this is to talk about real things. For example, if he is late, I will be angry. Maybe I'm waiting for my friend. Oh, he is always late. If he is late today, I will be angry. This is the likely or probable result to this condition. If it rains tomorrow, we'll go see a movie. So here we're using the contraction of we will, right? If it rains tomorrow, right? So here's our condition. If this thing happens, if it rains tomorrow, we will go see a movie. It is likely or probable that we'll go see a movie because we can't really do anything outside on a rainy day. So remember, if this thing happens, that thing will happen. Let's look at some more examples. If it rains, I won't go to the park. So just like we can use will, we can also use won't. So if it rains, the likely result is I won't go to the park, right? Still future, I won't go in the future. If I study today, I'll go to the party tonight. So here we have, again, our simple condition. If I study today, my reward to myself is I'll go to the party tonight. I will do it in the future. That is likely and probable and real. If I have enough money, I will buy some new shoes. So here again, we're using our contraction I'll for I will. If I have enough money, right, if this condition is met, I will buy some new shoes. So as you can see, this is a really commonly used conditional because it's about real life, right? Simple things in real life. If this happens, I will do this, or this will happen. Another example where we've switched our clauses. So instead of if, then we're switching. She'll be late if the train is delayed. And remember, we could also say, if the train is delayed, she'll be late. We can always switch these around like this. So first conditional is a simple one. And we can also use modal verbs like should, could, may, and might to change the certainty of the result. For example, if you drop that glass, it might break. So I don't always have to use will. I might be uncertain about what will happen. So maybe it is a plastic glass. Ooh, if you drop it, it might break, right? Still talking about the future. It might break. Or I may finish that letter if I have time. So here again, we've switched our clauses. If I have time, I may finish that letter. So here it's kind of a prediction, right? But we use the same structure and we're just switching out will with a modal verb, might or may. All right, so remember, first conditional is if this happens, then something will happen. If this thing happens, that thing will happen. Present and future. Okay, let's go on to our second conditional. So the second conditional is similar but different from the first conditional because here it's talking about an unlikely or hypothetical condition and its probable result. Do you guys know what this word means? Hypothetical? Hypothetical means not real or imagined, right? I'm just imagining what would happen. The time is now or any other time, and the situation is, again, hypothetical, not real, just imagined. So we're not talking necessarily about real life, what will happen, what I will do if something happens. Let's take a look at how this conditional is different. So here in our first clause, we're using the simple past. And for our main clause, we're using present conditional or present continuous conditional. So what is that in simpler terms? If this thing happened, that thing would happen. So here again, just imagining. If you went to bed earlier, you wouldn't be so tired. So this means you didn't go to bed early, right? You are maybe if you're tired today and I see you, if you went to bed earlier, you wouldn't be so tired. So if you had done this thing in the past, what would the result be? You wouldn't be so tired. If the weather wasn't so bad, we would go to the beach. So here again, just imagining, just hypothetical, not real. So if the weather wasn't so bad, we would go to the beach. This means, the weather is bad, so we cannot go to the beach today. But, imagine if the weather wasn't so bad, we would go to the beach. Just imagining, right? Not real, hypothetical. Let's look at some more examples of the second conditional. If I was the president, I would give everyone more vacation days. Right? This is not real. Unfortunately, I am not the president, or maybe fortunately, I am not the president. But if I was, I would give everyone more vacation days. Again, hypothetical. If this thing happened, if I was the president, then this thing would happen. I would give everyone more vacation days. If you really loved me, you would visit me more often. So here we have our past if clause, if you really loved me, and then our conditional using would, you would visit me more often. If I had more money, I would travel everywhere. So again, imagining, if I had more money, I would travel anywhere. I'm sure in an English class sometime in the past, your teacher may have asked you hypothetical questions like this. What would you do if you were president? If I was the president, I would da da da. What would you do if you won the lottery? If I won the lottery, I would da 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 da. So this is second conditional, not real, hypothetical. One thing to note, so here in number 1, I say if I was, but it is very common to say if I were. So this is called the subjunctive mood. If I were you, I would give up smoking. Or if I were a plant, I would love rain. So you can use was, but it is correct and very common to say if I were when we're using this conditional form. Also, just like we could for our first conditional, we can use modal verbs in the main clause of this form to change our certainty. We might buy a larger house if we had more money. So here's our, we're stuck. Whoops. So didn't mean to scribble that out. So here our if clause, if we had more money. We might buy a larger house. So here, right, not real, if we had more money, but we don't. But if we did, I can also use might or may, words like this, if I'm not really sure what I would do. Oh, if I won the lottery, I might travel to every country, or I might do this, I might do that. All right, so this is our second conditional, which we use to talk about things that are not real. And we're just imagining, right? Hypothetical is the word to use for this one. All right, guys, we're almost done. Let's talk about our third conditional. So this one is a bit different. This refers to, it's all in the past. This third conditional is all happening in the past. It refers to an impossible condition in the past and its probable result in the past. So actually, we often use the third conditional to talk about things we regret. If I had done this, this would have been different. So third conditional, all talking about the past, an impossible condition in the past. These sentences are truly hypothetical and unreal because we can't change the past, right? In the second conditional, I'd say, oh, if I won the lottery, I would. That's hypothetical, but maybe one day I could win the lottery. Third conditional is totally unreal because it's all about the past and we cannot change the past. So the time is the past and the situation is hypothetical. So let's take a look at what this means. So here we're using past perfect. If, past perfect, and then a perfect conditional or perfect continuous conditional. So what does that look like? If this thing had happened, that thing would have happened. So all imagining, right? All hypothetical. Didn't happen, wish it did. For example, if it had rained, you would have gotten wet. Today's a sunny day, but if it had rained in the past, you would have gotten wet in the past, right? So these impossible things that would have, could have happened in the past. Next one, if you had worked harder, you would have passed the test. So here we see a commonly used way that the third conditional is used to talk about regret. If you had worked harder, you would have passed the test. If this past condition were true, this other thing also would have been true, but you didn't. You didn't work hard, you didn't pass the test. If you had worked harder, you would have passed the test. And notice here, yes, we're using perfect tense, which means we're using things like had happened, would have happened, have gotten, have passed. We're using our past participles here. All right, let's look at some more examples and then we'll take some questions. So here we go, third conditional examples. If I had worked harder, I would have gotten a promotion. So here are a different form of that passing the test question. If I had worked harder, I would have gotten a promotion. So this means I didn't get a promotion because I didn't work hard enough. So remember, third conditional, totally hypothetical, all in the past. If I had worked harder in the past, I would have gotten a promotion in the past. If I had known you were coming, I would have baked a cake. Maybe it's my friend's birthday and they come to my house unexpectedly, and I say, "Oh, if I had known you were coming, I would have baked a cake." So I can't change this, right? This is totally hypothetical. I can't go back in time and bake a cake, but I can tell my friend, if I had known you were coming in the past, I would have baked a cake in the past. And here again, regret. Oh, I wish I would have known. I wish I could have done that. And here, oh, so sad. I would have been happy if you had called me on my birthday. So in this form, just like in our other forms, we can take our if clause and our main clause and switch them. So I could say, if you had called me on my birthday, I would have been happy. Or I would have been happy if you had called me on my birthday. Again, all in the past, right? Can't change it, all in the past. And just thinking what could have, would have happened. Last one. If you had told me you were free, I wouldn't have made other plans. So, this is something I say to my husband very often. Sometimes he wants to do things together, but I've made other plans. So I say, if you had told me you were free and didn't have plans, I wouldn't have made other plans. So, again, what could have been different in the past? So, what about contractions? So if we look at a sentence, our first sentence here, if I had worked harder, I would have gotten a promotion. So I had and I would they both have the same contraction, I'd. So it can be a little confusing to read. So that with contractions, if I'd worked harder, I'd have gotten a promotion. One key trick here to know, does this mean would or had? Let's take a look at this first part. If I'd worked harder. So what sounds more correct? If I had worked harder or if I would worked harder? It would be if I had, right? When we have an ed, this is a past participle, then it must be had. If I had worked, if I had known, if you had told me. And here we see our past participles, right? Same, had called, had known. So if the next word is a past participle, we know it means have or had. And our second part, I'd have gotten a promotion. So what makes more sense? I would have gotten a promotion or I had have gotten a promotion? It'd be I would have, right? And often in these conditionals, we use the phrase I would have. So I'd have means I would have. Here's another example. If I'd known you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. Again, we know this first part with our if is had because we have our past participle known. If I had known, if I'd known, I'd have baked a cake. There again, I would have baked a cake. But actually, more often we say I would have. So we don't necessarily say, if we have the phrase I would have, we could say I'd have, but often we say I would have. So it's a little easier there. So let's review and then we'll take some questions. So zero conditional is what we use for general facts and truths. If this thing happens, that thing happens. If you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. Simple truths, simple facts. First conditional is about a real, possible condition and a possible or probable result. If this thing happens, that thing will happen. For example, if I exercise, I will go out to eat with my friends later. If I do this, then that will happen. Second conditional is unlikely or hypothetical. For example, if this thing happened, that thing would happen. And our last one, our third conditional, is truly not possible. All happens in the past. If this thing had happened, that thing would have happened. If you had told me you were coming over, I would have made dinner. So, this is a useful chart for remembering, and I hope that you guys learned a lot in this lesson today.